Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hi everyone, welcome back to Naked Conversations. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you to those who always tune in. I really appreciate you spending your time with us here on the show. And if you're new, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. If you don't have my book yet, Naked Communication, what are you waiting for? It's over on my website, sagebhobbs.com, and it is a quick, fast, and powerful read around how to really speak up, use your voice, and have incredible relationships in all areas of your life. So go check that out. And before I introduce today's guest, who is a friend of mine and is so fabulous, and I'm just excited for you to learn more from her, I also want you to know where you can get the resources mentioned on today's show. It's over at sagebhobbs.com/episode-31. sagebhobbs.com/episode-31. So today's guest is a friend of mine named Queirra Fenderson, and Queirra and I met in Vegas, which sounds shadier than it really is. But we were immediately drawn to each other, or I will say I was drawn to her. I'm not sure how she felt, but I was immediately drawn to her intelligence and her poise and her big-heartedness and her sense of humor. And it was really lovely to get to know her over this 3-day training we did together on women's leadership and public speaking. And since then, I have known that I wanted to keep her in my orbit, keep her in my world, and have her as a guest on the show. Queirra is a professional speaker and certified coach who helps successful leaders reinvent their relationship to ambition. She's all about ambition. She breaks it down for us around what does ambition really mean? How can it serve us? How can it hinder us? How does it impact our burnout? How does it impact our thriving? So she's inspired business and professional women's audience with her dynamic keynotes and TED-style talks, as well as interactive workshops to embrace a new style of ambition and step into their mogul mindset. We talk about how ambition is different for women versus men. We talk about what it means to be a triple minority, young, Black, and female, and she's incredibly honest around what that experience has been like for her. We talk about the how and why of taking off our superwoman capes and what that can do for us in terms of liberating our expression in the world and promoting ourselves in our work and our business, whether we work for ourselves or we're in a corporate or organizational setting. We also get into the power of vulnerability and then intuition, spirituality, and how they dance and interplay with ambition. So before becoming a coach, Queirra led teams as a marketing director for more than 10 years. She secretly geeks out on, and maybe it's not that secretly, productivity, personal branding, and high performance. She holds the professional certified coach credential from the International Coach Federation and has a bachelor's degree in marketing from George Mason University. She's funny, she's smart, she's a beautiful presence, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest and friend, Queirra Fenderson. Let's do this. Hi, Queirra. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Sage. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, I'm so excited. We've been long anticipating this conversation together, and we were already chatting at length before I said, hold on, let's hit record and actually do this for other people to hear.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so easy to talk to you, which is one of the, why I want to go deeper and let people learn from your wisdom as well. What I always start the conversation with, because I'm curious about this, and I think it's really at the heart of the naked communication work that I do, is what does courage mean to you?
What does courage mean to me? I think courage means being willing to speak your truths as authentically and vulnerably as possible, regardless of the outcome. And I've had some crazy outcomes. And it takes a lot of courage to be truthful to yourself and be willing to share that with other people.
Yeah, I love that regardless of the outcome part,
Yeah.
right? Because if we knew if the outcome was guaranteed, it wouldn't require as much courage.
Or sometimes we think we know the outcome, and so it requires more courage, and
Right.
you're wrong about the outcome.
Right. So really being vulnerable and authentic with
Yeah.
what's true for you, regardless of what may or may not result from it. It's big. It's awesome. Thank you for that. I love to couch the whole conversation in that with every single person who comes on, because I think it's really like the underpinning of all of us living a more powerful, impactful, and joyful life is this piece of courage. You can't have all the juice and the excitement and the impact if you're not willing to have some of the fear that requires courage along with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is the truth right there. And it's a really great grounding question because, I mean, we're going to have a naked conversation, aren't we? So it's going to take a bit of courage
Right.
to share some
Totally.
things today.
Exactly. I never even thought about it that way, but it's like I'm priming the pump for my
Yeah, you are.
my poor guests who don't know that that's the first question that they're going to get unless they've listened to the show before.
Well, I'm
Okay.
ready. Bring it.
Okay, Queirra. So tell us more about your work and how you came to do it, because some of the people listening may not know you, though they will know and love you now. Tell us a little bit about, what you do and how you got here.
Oh my gosh, how did I get here? I'm so glad I am here. So, I'm an ambition coach. So, I've been trained as a life and business coach. I stumbled into this career, but I was clear that I was going to work with highly ambitious women. And I got so clear about that because I have had such a roller coaster life being really ambitious. I mean, I always tell the story when I was in, what was it, middle school? I think it was seventh grade, and I ran for class president, and I didn't win because there was another girl whose name was Queirra, very similar to mine, and spelled it phonetically. My name starts with a Q, so no one thought to vote for the Q girl. And when I lost, all my friends are coming up to me, "Yay, you won, you won." And I was like, "No, I did not win." And they realized they didn't know how to spell my name, and we're in middle school, and it was so devastating. It was a
Oh
lot.
my gosh.
All the credit to my mother, single mom. It was her and I. We were best friends. And I got home and I was like, "I lost, Mom." And she said, "That's okay. We're going to do it again next year." And the following year, we got really creative. I came up with this little rap so that people could remember how to spell my name. And I won. But then every single year since I ran, I won. So I was class president from like eighth grade in middle school to my senior year in high school. And I think that's when I actually realized that I had this thing called ambition and that it was going to allow me to win. And I just rode that roller coaster the whole time. And unfortunately, there were a number of times once I became an adult and had my first couple of jobs where I was burning myself out. But because that was my winning strategy, I never wanted to let go of it. And so having one of the biggest burnouts and kind of rock bottom moments in my life, and that's when I lost my job and then became a coach. That's when I realized, oh, there's another way to this thing called ambition. And that's where I started to cultivate and focus on working with highly ambitious women.
Okay. So let's break this down a little bit, because I think there is a lot of meaning behind ambition and people don't always define it the same way. And I think some people feel really positive about it and others feel like it has negative connotations. So how would you even define ambition?
Yeah, so you're so spot on. I think that's where we have to start, right? It's like, what's our relationship to ambition? Because one of the things that I've noticed is if you put the words ambitious and woman in the same sentence, you're going to turn heads, but it depends on whose head it is. Most women don't consider themselves ambitious because of that negative connotation. Oh, she's headstrong, she's bossy, watch out for her, she's like a dog with a bone. And I know these phrases because I've had other women and men say those phrases to me in my career. But then also, like I said, living with a single mom and watching her do what it took to raise me and provide for me showed me a relationship to ambition that was like, when I set an intention and it's something that I want, I'm going to go after it and I'm going to get it. And so I think it's a tenacity, a resiliency, a determination, and a clarity of intention of really knowing what you're worth, who you are, and what you want to create in this world that could drive your ambition. And I think because there are some of us who are not as connected with ourselves, like we're talking about courage, knowing yourself, knowing your truth. When you're not as connected with yourself, You then start to define your life based off of external factors. And then you pick up society's definition of an ambitious woman. And society's definition of an ambitious woman has things like, oh my gosh, how can you marry a type A woman, a headstrong woman? We can't have her in the boardroom. There's so many things that people are intimidated by a headstrong, ambitious woman. And so I think it's really about being unapologetic about knowing that you're the creator of your life. That's where ambition comes into play, being responsible for what you create in your life.
Got it. Wow, you just said so much. I want to unpack it a little bit.
Sure.
First of all, I love how you strung this together with tenacity, resiliency, and a clarity of intention. Mm-hmm. Those are the words you used that I loved so much. When you speak about a clarity of intention, one thing I really appreciate about you, Queirra, is that you have this sort of marriage between sort of a spiritual or a woo-woo with a really grounded, boots on the ground, get it done combination. So I think some people like clarity of intention. They're like, what are you even talking about? So can you, what does that mean for you? Because you've made it work for yourself, both in corporate settings from middle school, student council, all the way through corporate to entrepreneurship. What is this idea of tenacity, resiliency, and clarity, that clarity of intention piece?
Thanks so much for breaking that down, right? Because sometimes I get into my spirituality, my woo, and forget that not everyone believes what I believe. Oh, gosh. My spiritual journey has been the cornerstone for shifting and transforming my relationship to my ambition. I want to be really clear. My spiritual journey is not a religious journey. I love all religions, which is a really cool thing when I like to go to different countries and explore their religious backgrounds and go to their churches and mosques and things like that. But spiritually, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And I remember I was talking to this one woman, and she said, well, I wasn't raised to know anything about a soul, a spirit. I don't have a word for that. And I said, well, what is that feeling you get when you're like, oh, an idea comes in my head? And she said, oh, that's inspiration. I said, okay, but then for you, your spiritual walk begins with the idea that inspiration happens. There's a spark. It's acknowledging that. So the thing for me, as I was really exploring how this all fits together, was acknowledging my intuition, because we all have it. And that's one of the cornerstones that I work with my ladies on too, is like developing and strengthening their intuition. And so when you start looking at your relationship to your intuition and how often you're acknowledging those little sparks of inspiration or watching coincidences and not actually saying, oh, that was lucky, but I was guided here. That's when you start to strengthen that intuition. And when I was able to start paying attention to my intuition and honoring it, I noticed this dichotomy between my drive, like the practical kind of get things done, right? It's like, I gotta get this list done. There's 10 things, go, 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 go. While my intuition was like, you're tired, or you need a glass of water, or we need some fresh air. And so before I had a relationship with my intuition, because I was ignoring her, I wouldn't get the water. I wouldn't go for a walk. I wouldn't take care of my needs. And I burned out multiple times. But then when I just started to take those little cues and give myself little tiny bits of permission, I started to create that relationship that has now turned into my spiritual walk, which is, it's way more bigger than, just intuition, meditations and different things like that. I won't go too woo, but it's the beautiful balance of now I take action from inspiration versus a feeling that I should, could, would, or need to.
Okay, now I take action from inspiration versus I could, should, or need to.
Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda died yesterday is what my track coach used to always tell me. So I can't stand any sentences that have could, would, or should, because you can't do anything with those.
That's what your track coach used to say?
Oh my gosh. It was so weird. Yeah. So I ran track in high school, and I ran one of the hardest sprints, 400-meter sprint around the whole track. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this. I wish you would have told me to do, like, just whining about like not wanting to run.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda died yesterday. You don't realize what he's talking about when you're a teenager, but looking at it now, if someone said, oh, you could have done this or you should have done that. And it irks me because we only create our future. So I appreciate when things are reworded to say, oh, next time, try out this or another approach, so we're looking forward because could, would, and should just make you feel like shame, guilt, blame, makes you feel like crap.
Yes. And I love that we only create our future and maybe next time. And, my son is in third grade, and in his school this year, they're actively teaching a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which I'm like, that is so huge. I didn't get taught that in elementary school. So like, he's like struggling with math, and he's like, he actually, math is not a good example because that's not something he struggles with, but I'll use that as an example. If it's a new kind of challenge problem and he's like, I just can't figure this out yet. He'll like tack on the word yet, and he won't do it the first time. And then the second time he'll be like, oh, I'm not that good at that yet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if we all had more of that flexible.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills.
I know, like it's so huge. I should tell his teacher how huge that is. I need to go back and do that. But I hear you saying that as part of your process to get to this balance between the driven and the inspired.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a dance with the growth or the flexibility.
Well, yeah, because I'm hard-headed. We have so many different metaphors, but like I was talking to someone else and I was like, God throws pebbles and then he throws bricks. And I'm the one that always needs a brick upside my head because I'm hard-headed and I'm getting better at it. I am, but I swear, I just don't want any more ambitious women to have to get the brick. We can pay attention to the pebbles, but those bricks hurt.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Pay attention to the pebbles. Yes, I think I could do that too. I could do that too. So do you think there's a different connotation around the term ambition for men versus women?
Oh, for sure. Oh gosh. I guess you can kind of hear the like, oh, yes. It's funny though. Let me actually pull that back. So as a woman, I feel like, so I did this article called Triple Minority, what it's like being young, Black, and female in the workplace. And it's tough because I think whenever you're any type of minority, you're always trying to overcompensate. And by being a female, you're automatically kind of looked at as less than. And I remember growing up just in my early career when I was a marketing director before I was a coach, and not really being able to pick up on the nuances, but having looked back, noticing how men related to the women and how it almost seemed like they entertained us a little bit. And I don't know how to explain it. It just felt like it was more of an entertainment than a respect. And so I think men are taught and probably just have this natural kind of masculine protector type of thing where they just walk around with this level of confidence. Mm-hmm. And society puts this expectation on them that they have to provide and they have to be the breadwinner. And so they're already conditioned to be the one on top. Mm-hmm. And I think women are fighting against the society norms of, well, you can stay at home, take care of the kids, or your husband will take care of you, that type of thing. But I say that also considering that I have coached men before. And the thing that I find that's similar about us being ambitious is that we both deal with the same struggles silently. They're just seen differently. So we're still struggling with analysis paralysis and overwhelm and self-care and all the common things that ambitious-driven people struggle with. But I think that it's more accepted in our society as a man, but I also think there's probably a lot more pressure on men because they're expected to be driven and ambitious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the expectation is different, and therefore the experience is really different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's messy all the way around because they've been conditioned to be ambitious in a sense, being the provider, but then there's also that expectation and that pressure. So it looks different, but behind the scenes.
And there's the confidence because there's like an assumption of their place. Mm-hmm. That makes me think of, now my brain's going to pop culture, but the experience of the movie Wonder Woman coming out and then Black Panther, both were like these, and you can speak to this, but how I see it partially was that they were both like these revolutionary ideas in what it looks like for women and people of color in this country to be the heroes and like to be the brilliant, smart, accomplished, successful leaders in a sense. And I remember seeing like on Twitter or something when Wonder Woman came out, oh, is this what men feel like every time they watch a movie? Like, oh, no wonder they think they can do everything. No wonder they think they can like conquer the world and, And I was like, that's so true because we're not conditioned in the same way for the assumption of success.
Yes, representation matters for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So talk to me about this. Is this an article? What is this article? Triple minority. Where can I find that?
Yeah,
I want to share that with people in the show notes.
For sure. So it's posted on my LinkedIn. I think I'm sure it's on my website too.
You wrote this article.
So I just wrote this article.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll make sure that I get that on the show notes for people to check out. So let's go there for a minute. So this triple minority idea, because you went through that really fast, and I want to again, break it down a little bit, because you have the layers, the young, what were the three layers that you?
Young, Black, and female.
Young, Black, and female. Okay. So I just really, on the show too, it's so important to me to honor like varied experiences, because I'm really aware of my own position and how it does not represent everybody's position and my privilege. So I wanted you to break that down a little bit. You mentioned your mom was a single mom and what you learned from her. And it sounds like she was amazing in sort of laying the foundation for what's possible for you. But what other challenges do you think you may have faced given the triple minority factor? And that some of our listeners might be like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Somebody's going to actually identify and speak to those additional challenges to my desire for success and ambition.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I must say, that was one of the hardest articles for me to write. It was in my first year as a coach and as an entrepreneur, because I was always used to putting on some type of mask or professionalism. And I knew that I had this story about, like I said, being triple minority. So, one thing in the Black community, especially with the high number of single mothers, is, and this goes back even before then, like this goes just back to slave times, when these women had to watch their children and their husbands being ripped from them and never see them again. And they're being raped, and they have to keep on a strong face. And I mean, the Black woman is a strong backbone to our community. And we've always had to be the strong woman, because so many things were happening to our men and our children. And so I think culturally, we have passed that strength down to each other. And I remember growing up, and a number of times, I know this is common for a number of my friends, that we were always taught as a Black woman, you have to work that much harder to prove yourself just to get to par, just to get the par to the white woman, or just get to par to, the Black man still, right? So when I was growing up and just experiencing things, it was really ironic, because I went to one of the most diverse high schools in America. National Geographic actually came to our school and did a whole thing about it.
Wow.
Had the highest representation of languages spoken, but it didn't mean that just because we were diverse, there were a lot of people like me. I think there were like, I don't know, I was probably the only Black girl in my class every single time, whatever class I was going into. Not the whole class, but like, science class or whatnot.
Got it. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it was such a melting pot, but we also didn't see a lot of color, because I was just so used to being in this diverse environment. But then when it came to the workplace, that's when I started to see the difference. Now, I was the youngest marketing director in my company, and I fought hard for that position. Maybe there were 3 other Black people in the whole company, and there were a lot of women as well. And I just noticed how I was being related to. If I wasn't battling being young, so I was in my 20s, maybe mid 20s at that point. If I wasn't battling being young, then I was battling being a woman, walking into the boardroom as a director, and there's all these other men, white men. You can kind of see the looks and how they were different. So in some respect, I was always overcompensating for one of my minority points, being young, being female, or being Black. Yeah. And it's tough, because you have to, when you're young, you have to dress the part. You try to make yourself a little older. When you're female, you're trying to, I read this great article about women's emotions in the workplace, and that women cry in the workplace when they're really pissed off and frustrated, but men think that's a weakness. It's just how women express themselves differently. So you always had to control your emotions. And then being Black, you had to watch how much of the culture actually came out, especially around like your hair or, the colors you're wearing, things like that.
So, oh my gosh. I mean, yes, that's like the tip of the iceberg, right? Of how we could unpack this conversation. But I so appreciate your willingness to go there a bit. It sounds to me too, like the ambition piece layered into that, because there was a validation to that it was important to be ambitious in order to get where you wanted to go.
Yeah. I mean, you had to be, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're thinking about, if, like I said, going back to like the Black woman at any stage in history, we had to be clear, strong minded, intentional, go after what we want, fight for what we want. And so it's a part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when the ambition came in, it was like, well, who are you not to be ambitious? What
Mm-hmm.
else are you? If you're not ambitious, then you're just on the system somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
where it just becomes, you don't. So when we talk about even representation with Black Panther, it was amazing to see this thriving community, because that is the dichotomy in the Black community. There's those of us who are thriving, and then there's those of us who just choose to be on the system and not, and I say choose because some people actually need the support. So I want to be very clear. Like, there are people who choose that, and it's not a race thing, but when we're talking about our community, we are represented in a negative light, and we don't actually get to see the positive, ambitious, contributors to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. So then what happens when your ambition sort of fails you? When you say that if ambition is like kind of one of the cornerstones, particularly, I love how you said Black women have been a strong backbone within our community throughout time, right? Like since the
Yeah.
duration of the Black experience in America. And actually, I literally just watched the movie Mudbound last night, which was
Mhm.
so intense and so beautiful, I thought. But Mary J. Blige plays the mom, which was so cool.
Mm.
And she does an extraordinary job. And I'm just thinking of how she was such the backbone of holding like the whole
Yeah.
family together, So
Yeah.
if ambition is the thing that gets you, I don't want to say out, but like away from being a part of the system, and I might not get the
Yeah.
language quite right here, but I'm committed to speaking through these messy conversations. Like I'm committed to
Sure.
it, even so. So if that's the way out, but then ambition burns you out,
Yeah.
talk to me about that a bit. Yeah. How do you find this balance?
Yeah, I get the tricky word around the system, right? Like, even when I said it, I was like, oh, is system the right word? And so I think even if we take it out of just making it a Black or white or racial thing,
Mm-hmm.
what I found is this, and this is why I created the Ambition Studio. It's that women who have this ambitious drive, who need to be the backbone, who pride themselves on being strong, don't have a safe space to take off their superwoman cape.
Nice. Yeah.
And one of the biggest breakthroughs I've had in my transformation from burning myself out with ambition to being able to really balance it is my level of vulnerability. And so as I was going through my many phases of burnout at different times that I didn't know was burnout. So one example, if we're going to be naked with it, before,
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So I told you, right? I was the youngest marketing director at my company, worked hard for that promotion, landed it, felt like I was on top of the world, making the most money I ever made in my career. And I was engaged, but it felt like I was living with a roommate.
Yeah.
I was having physical symptoms of burnout, like my back was going out, my traps and my neck were locking up. I literally was going to the woman doctor, and she's like, "You're stressed." And I'm like, no, something's not working. Like, there's just something's not working. She's like, no, this is stress. And I was like, no, prescribe me something, because like, I'm not stressed. So my point is, like, so it affects you everywhere. Relationships, it affects you sexually, it affects you physically, it affects you in your relationship with your friends and family. And I had all the warning signs, but I was afraid to be vulnerable with myself and tell myself the truth. And so I allowed myself to burn out. And like I said, this happened multiple times. It wasn't the first time, but now I really, really do know what burnout is. The challenge became this. I had to tell myself the truth once I was completely, when I say burnt out, like, there was a time when I took off of work for an entire week because I literally couldn't move my neck because my traps were locked up. Like, I was having muscle spasms. Or I've had to go to my husband and say, you know what, I feel more like roommates more than lovers, and having to have those vulnerable conversations, and being willing to admit where I was not giving him the time and giving myself the time. So I would say that the key to all of this is being vulnerable with yourself first, but then you have to go find that safe space to take off the cape and actually go get supported around shifting it. Because my husband heard me, but he didn't know what to do with it. He wasn't trained in this kind of stuff. But I didn't want to let go of my ambition because my ambition worked for me. I just needed to know how to manage it differently.
Got it. So you didn't completely break up with your ambition. You found a way to have a different relationship.
Yeah, I almost feel like I couldn't break up with her because like it would have been cutting off an arm.
Right.
It was just like this thing. It was a love-hate relationship. It was like, I don't understand it. I don't understand how I have almost everything I thought I wanted, right? I have the house and the husband and the career, and I feel like crap. And yet, but you know what ended up happening? I'll tell you this, Sage. This is what ended up happening, which was very interesting. Unfortunately, people start to relate to you as a certain type of person. And we train people how to relate to us. So I had trained the people in my life to relate to me one of two ways. The people who wanted something out of me, so my boss or my employees or clients, whatever, they were trained to continuously request things of me and not care about my breaking point, you know? And I didn't have really strong boundaries then because I just wanted to prove to you that I could do it all, superwoman style.
Right. That's the superwoman part, right?
Right? Superwoman part. So I would yes, 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 yes. And my bosses at a certain point, I had a particular boss where she actually played on my ambition. So she would give me the most difficult projects. She would challenge me on things. She would do that thing like, I bet you can't, just so that I could prove that I could. And then on the other side, with my friends and family, they were trained that Queirra had everything together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So they never were like, how are you really doing? They never said, hey, it's been 2 months since we had happy hour. Come out. I'm dragging you out. I don't care about your job. So when you have that community or that bubble around you, I mean, you're left to your own devices, which is just keep going until you get forced to burn completely out.
So I want to know then, how did you figure this out? Like, what does it look like now to manage your ambition? That's the language I think you use. I have a couple questions, but that's the first one, because I'm sure that we have people listening who can really relate to people thinking they have it all together, to saying yes to everything so that they can always prove their value, to always striving, always driving. So I know burnout was part of the catalyst, but what did you actually do to help yourself manage this ambition more effectively?
Well, yeah, it's been a journey. So it definitely started with my work in coaching. So in order to become a coach, you have to be coached. So my coach's training program was a full year, and I had a coach for a full year. And I've always had a coach since then. So I've had multiple coaches at one time as well. So I've always had someone to reflect to me when I was doing it to myself. And so what I like to say is, in any of the phase, I guess you could say, the first phase is awareness, is that self-awareness. Now, I had a coach, so they were able to show me a lot of the things that were going on inside of me that I wasn't able to admit. But even if you don't have a coach, you can take a check-in at the end of the day and say, okay, how did this day go? Did I eat lunch? Did I drink enough water? Am I exhausted? Like, you can actually notice what's physically going on in your body and then being able to admit that. But once you have the awareness stage down, the most challenging part is recognizing and admitting that you always have a choice. And then that's when you will change. And so when you notice, and I use this as an example because this happens to me all the time, when you notice that you work straight through lunch and you don't eat until it's 3:30, 4 o'clock because your stomach is like eating itself.
Right. Oh.
You can, right. But you can choose, are you going to grab that granola bar out of the drawer, or are you going to get up and physically go rejuvenate yourself, make your lunch, go for a walk, do something like that? And these are really teensy, tiny examples because trust me, it wasn't as little as like giving myself a lunch break, but it was about being willing to choose another way. And it's very scary as an ambitious person to choose another way because the first thing in your mind is failure. This is my winning strategy. I work hard and I get a reward. So letting go of the mindset that I have to work hard to get my result, which is where spirituality comes into play. Because really, you have to listen to your intuition.
Okay, stop right there because that's big.
Okay,
so stop right there because this is so second nature to you. But can you go, you know what I mean? Because this is good. So the spirituality part comes in because there's something around you have to work hard to get what you want and your intuition. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Okay. So, all right. So permission to go woo. You guys will understand this. I'm going to make it really simple. Just like there is a such thing as law of gravity, there is a such thing as law of attraction. And we are working with law of gravity and law of attraction at all times, no matter if you choose to or not. You don't effort your way and say, I'm going to work really hard to sit in this chair and make gravity work for me. It just happens. Same thing happens with law of attraction. Like attracts like. The reason why you and I are on this podcast, Sage, is because we're similar. We like each other. We gravitate it. We pull it towards each other and we rock it out.
We won the contest. We became friends because we both won that really cool speaking contest. You and me. Woo! Right.
Yeah, that is perfect, right? Off of a Facebook ad at that. So like attracts like, right? Okay, perfect example. So that's how we became here. So to that point, and I'm just trying to break this down really simply because again, like I said, spirituality is not religion. It doesn't have to have a particular name, even though it can. We can just talk about the laws of the universe. If like attracts like, then you're always attracting to you what you think about, what your energy is about, what you're focused on. And so if you're in a state of burnout, if you're in a state of worry, if you're in a state of franticness and anxiety, you are attracting more of those things to you. Just naturally, that's how it is. And so when we talk about making a choice, right? When I said like, okay, I'm really hungry, I'm overwhelmed, am I going to stop and take care of myself, or am I going to push through until 5 because I just have 2 more hours? Those are 2 separate intentions or energies. When you say, I'm just going to push through to 5 o'clock, that's that, because if I work hard, then I'll get a reward. But the feeling inside your body, that feeling of exhaustion and grinding and almost climbing up a mountain, is giving off the signal to the universe, to the law of attraction, to the forces that be, whatever you want to call them. Hey, give her more of that, because that is the energy that she likes to be in. Because she's choosing to be in that energy, because we're supposed to be happy in the world. So they, meaning like the law, universe, doesn't know what your definition of happiness is unless you put out, hey, this is my definition of happiness. So you're attracting more of that, which then perpetuates the cycle. But when you follow your intuition, when you follow what your body needs, when you follow what feels good, what would feel good is to take a break, go walk down to the sandwich shop, get a sandwich, feel the breeze, be happy with the sun, stretch your legs, whatever the case may be. You are now choosing to be the creator of your life and emit the energy, the vibe that says, hey, I want more of this. It's like when you lay on the beach and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I wish I could be here all the time. That's high vibe life that we talk about. But that actually has an effect on what you bring into your world. So when you're ambitious, there's 2 ways to look at it. I'm ambitious, but I balance it with my intuition, which means when I want to set an intention, when I want to grow something, and I'm not saying it's 100%, right? Because we're human beings and humans aren't perfect. But I set an intention to, meditate every day so I can visualize and bask in that feeling of feeling good. Get outside every day. Like, make sure I have those experiences that feel so good and then celebrate them. Like, I'm having so much fun with you right now on this podcast. I'm going to get off of this podcast and I'm probably going to have a dance party because I'm like, that was so good, because like, milk it.
Yes. Yeah.
And from that will come another idea that's like, oh, maybe I should do so and so and so and so. And that's what we call an inspired action. And those are the actions to ambitiously follow, not the, oh, let me go back to my should, could, would, do list. Here's that inspired action. Let me go follow.
Okay, so that's how you marry ambition and intuition, which is to ambitiously follow inspired action.
Yes.
That is so good. So instead of just action, because action is the result, like action is the action for action's sake, because that's what you should do. You're saying, let's take our ambition and leverage it, but towards inspired action. That's the distinction.
Yeah, let me add to that because there's a really cool equation that I learned in my coach's training program that applies perfectly to the action. So there are insight junkies and then there are action junkies, and you need both.
I was going to say, I'm both. How can I be both? Because I'm kind of both.
You're spot on, right? Well, we swing in pendulums.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
My first year of business, I was like, insight, I was looking at everything and downloading everything and trying to learn everything. We were just talking about that, like professional development craziness, right?
Right. Totally. Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, oh crap, I wasn't taking action. So the beautiful balance is when you have insight plus action and you'll get a new result, right? But sometimes as ambitious people, like you were just saying, we will be like, action, go, 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 and never take a moment to pause and listen for the insight. It could be some feedback. It could be something that says, hey, pivot right here or tweak this thing. But if we don't slow our actions down enough to just hear what's trying to be communicated to us, we'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again with no new insight. And then on the other side, if we're constantly meditating or trying to listen to the newest podcast or download this guide or whatever the case may be, like I had a client who was just like going crazy, geeking herself out on podcasts. And by the time we got on our coaching call, she said, I cannot think anymore. My brain hurts. And I'm like, I gotcha, girl. Let's take some of those insights and turn them into actions. And that's where the courage comes into play too. Because sometimes those inspired actions are crazy and scary and like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. But those are the things that are actually going to propel you further than if you got 20 things done on your to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the perfect combination. The insight plus action is something I do all the time with my clients as well. Actually, we talk about it all the time because I really do think you need both in order to shift any behavior, in order to create new habits, in order to build momentum, in order to transform relationships. You have to have the combination of the insight and the action. So I just want to say two things. One is the disclaimer of the law of attraction. I always kind of like to do a law of attraction disclaimer when that comes up because I think it gets really misunderstood. And I don't want people listening to have dismissed it completely like, oh, that's that weird thing. And that I don't believe personally that the law of attraction means that we draw bad tragedies to ourselves, right? So like I'm a cancer survivor. I lost my dad to cancer. Those who've listened to the show know that I have a beloved next door neighbor who's 16 who has cancer. And I don't believe that any way that we lived our lives caused those things to come to us. I do think that life happens and we're dealt some good hands and we're dealt some bad hands. And within those circumstances, we have a lot of energetic choice as to our response.
Absolutely.
We can handle things with more grace. We can handle things with more courage, with more compassion. We can, invite in community or we could choose isolation. There's lots of ways we respond to life. And those things, so for example, with my neighbor who's battling cancer, the community, they always had the energetic vibe and action of community building within their home, like open door. Everybody was there. Everybody loves them. They're kind of a pillar of our community. And guess what happened when she got sick? Like that just got amplified with unbelievable amounts of resources and support and prayers and, prayer lists and lending of cars and all sorts of incredible, beautiful community vibrations. So I just like to say that disclaimer because I think sometimes people go, whatever. And you don't know what my life is like. And I want to say, I don't think it's that we attract in, life happens. It's then what do we do with the energy of the choice? Does that make sense?
Oh, phenomenally. Yes, that's true. Yes, absolutely. There's a number of cancer survivors in my family, my mother, my grandmother, both my grandmothers actually. And I think you're spot on. I mean, life happens because it's meant to happen to stretch you and grow you. I mean, life is about growth. And I've seen so many different responses to challenges. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's like, just because something happened to you or your family and your environment doesn't mean that you can just be victimized by it. And I think that's where, like you said, I love what you said about how your neighbor has the open community and just all the love and the vibes. And that stuff makes a difference. That is, I believe that's actually healing.
Me too. Yeah.
I've seen it happen. So thank you for the disclaimer for sure. Because I do understand when you say law of attraction, they go, oh boy, no, woo woo, whatever, next. And
right. But there's so much power in it. I mean, so that leads me to my second question with you, which is, it sounds to me like you kind of have this idea that intuition partnered with ambition can be a business strategy, or a career strategy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, exactly. You come from a corporate background.
Yeah.
What does that look like to have intuition literally be a part of how you, for those who are entrepreneurs, how you grow your business, for those who are in a different career environment, how you grow your career, however you get your message out into the world. How does intuition play into an actual strategy?
Oh gosh. I'm just like super excited to see my face right now. Well, it goes back to your first question about courage, 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 courage. Because it takes courage to trust your intuition. It takes even more courage to say, I just know, I have a gut feeling, and not having to be fact-based, which is tough in corporate. Maybe a little bit easier as an entrepreneur because you can call your own shots. But I like to teach and encourage what I call intuitive leadership. And what that looks like from a corporate standpoint, let's say you have employees or you're managing, or maybe you're the employee you're kind of trying to manage up. It's important to cultivate a culture where you give your employees some space to experiment. So I remember I worked at a company one time and our boss gave us $100 a month to put to anything we wanted that would work on, the project, the marketing campaign or whatever, just to go out and experiment and play around. It's almost like having a safe space to trust your gut and know that there won't be any negative repercussions. Also, another thing like in corporate, sometimes your boss or you're maybe managing, you say, okay, go and do X, Y, and Z, and you don't actually give your employees an opportunity to check in and see how that aligns with what they believe or what their values are, where they see the company going. Because I think there's a lot of power in collaboration. Like, we're meant to be on this planet as like co-creators, right? Like, we're not here to live by ourselves. We're here to play with each other. And so when you allow each other's ideas to meld together, you're going to create something that much bigger and better. So from a corporate perspective, it's encouraging the safe space, or even inviting it in, asking your boss, like, hey, how much freedom do I have on this? Can I move it around a little bit? Having the courage to speak up and say, this just doesn't feel right. I might not have the facts around it, but from my experience, or I just know this doesn't work. From a entrepreneurial space, well, I guess I could blend both of them, but from an entrepreneurial space, since that's who I primarily work with, what we're working on is that self-awareness. But then when you're sitting down to do your business planning or even your day-to-day tasks, it's important to get grounded in your intention. Anywhere, like even in networking, it's a fun little thing I like to do with networking. Before I go into a networking event or a community, I set my intention. My intention is to connect with 3 women who really could use my support, or my intention is to make a really strong relationship with this particular speaker, or whatever the case may be. And then I go in and I let myself be guided. So being guided is not some big woo-woo thing. It's like, oh, she looks cute. We might be best friends. Like, just like how you see somebody across the room. Because again, our energies are going to pull each other together. And then next thing you know, you're on a podcast with Sage, having a great time because we were pulled together.
Totally.
So, that's one thing in networking. But even in writing your to-do list, I practice meditating for 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, listening to the crazy things that my intuition wants me to do for that day, writing down the top 3 things that feel good, always about what feels good, and then going and blocking out those top 3 things. It's always about focusing on what feels good. And I kid you not, your abundance is tied to your feeling of joy and happiness. You don't have to worry about a quote unquote right way. You have to worry about what's true for you.
Got it. So I want to repeat that because I love that. You meditate for about 10 to 15 minutes and you kind of ask like, hey, what should I focus on today? You listen to what comes up for you and you let those things guide your to-do list.
Yeah. And sometimes they're scary. It depends on your business, right? So I'm in a service-based business. So sometimes I'll say, who do I need to support today? Who needs to hear from me today? Or sometimes I won't say anything and random things will come. There's been times where I've heard, call this bigwig person. And I have no idea why I would need to call that bigwig person. And I'm completely afraid to call that bigwig person. So I call someone in my support circle first and say, hey, got this intuitive hit to call XYZ bigwig person. Totally afraid of doing it, but I'm also committed to, living this bigger life. Can you hold me accountable to making sure I make this call today? Because I like to play around and say,
Mm-hmm.
intuitive actions or inspired actions last for about 48 to 72 hours. That's when all the stuff is aligned. You know how we say, oh, it's a coincidence. No, that's just the universe aligning to the things that we want. So when you act within about 72 hours, you're really in that prime spot of making it happen, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. So then what happens to the things that like have to get done, Kira? I got to ask this question, right? So like, I love that. I'm like, okay, I listened to the three things and then I
Yeah.
got to do the ones that feel good. But I'm like, but what about the things that like don't feel great, but eventually like I have to get done?
Yeah, girl. I know about
Where do
that,
they fit?
right?
Help me out. Help me
So
out.
I like to keep my to-do list to three things. And then all the other clutter crap goes to what I call like an out of integrity list or another list that's somewhere separate. And when it comes time to be like, all right, I got to sit down and pay these taxes or do all the admin, all that stuff I don't like, what's important for me is to be in a high vibe space to do it. So number one, I set a time limit around how long I think it's going to take because I noticed that if I don't want to do something, I will procrastinate. It'll take me so long to push through it. You'll do a
Mm-hmm.
couple
Mm-hmm.
things, you pop on Facebook, you do a couple things, and you're like, oh, maybe I should call this person. It's stupid. And then the other thing is, I get myself prepared to enjoy it. So if I know I need to have a particular playlist on or an incense burning, a candle lit, or my favorite drink, I'll do a dance party. Like I don't want to do things that feel like crap, and if I can make them feel better,
Yes. Okay.
I can knock them
Totally. Okay, great. So it's not that you're living in some alternative reality to us and you don't have
out.
laundry
Yeah,
or dishes. It's that, like, if you put on some really great music or a big cup of tea before you tackle your taxes or your administrative tasks, that their experience of doing them can be a different
or
energy.
at least throw a reward on the end, right? Like, okay, get through some
Mm-hmm.
taxes and
Mm-hmm.
then go have some sushi.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, good. Thank you for addressing that because I know that comes up for people. It's like, I can't just follow. Like, I live in
Uh
reality, you
huh.
know? I'm like, yeah, I do too. I live in reality too, but I'm really a happy person. I mean, I had somebody ask me, they say, are you really happy? Like, are you actually happy? It was a young person,
Yeah.
like a millennial age. I loved the question. And I thought, I like reflected and I thought, yeah, actually, I really, really am. Does that mean I have every single thing I want or every single thing is dialed in or I don't have hardship or challenges? Of course not. But is my experience of being alive one of happiness and gratitude? It genuinely, genuinely
Yeah.
is.
Yes.
And some of that is luck and privilege, and some of that is commitment and intention. And the parts that are commitment and intention, I really work on,
And if I could
you
just
know?
comment on the luck and privilege part, I get that to an extent, but I just think that, we all are just meant to walk the lives we want. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe I think I was a little triggered by the word privilege because I think that
Yeah.
we all just, like I said, we choose our journeys. And while you may see your lens as maybe privileged, I don't think being a cancer survivor is a privilege, I guess, in the sense that it's like a triumph. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's all,
Yeah, no, I get that. This is what I mean by that, because you're right. I said it pretty flippantly because, again, something I think about a lot, but I'll speak just a tiny bit more to that because it's a great, I love that you just challenged me back. Yes, you just interviewed me. What all that I mean by that is that I've had the opportunity to travel to about 20 countries in my lifetime, and I'm 40 years old and I'm white. And I'm aware that there is now, whether or not you believe in like reincarnation and all these things, that's a whole nother conversation. But in this life form, in this time frame,
yeah.
I kind of won a birth lottery to be born
Mm-hmm.
into the United States with all of my basic needs met all of my life,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that to me, I do really see as a position of privilege worldwide, right? Just, and that doesn't mean that I'm better than, I'm
Yes.
just owning, I want to acknowledge that I have seen suffering and poverty much more than anything I have ever experienced. Somebody said, and I don't know who it was, but I love it. Like, brilliance is universal, but opportunity isn't.
Yeah.
So, like, brilliance is everywhere, no matter where you were born. If you're in one of the slums in Kenya that I'd gotten to see, or,
Yeah.
versus the Upper West Side of Manhattan, brilliance is universal, but opportunity isn't. So, when I say privilege, I just mean that I was born into more opportunity
Yeah.
than many. And I want to just respect that. When I just, I've had the privilege of doing some of the things I've gotten to do that have gotten me where I am because I was afforded more opportunities than some.
Yeah.
Does that make
Oh,
sense?
absolutely. And I feel like we could like tangent off on such a different conversation, but thank you for clarifying that because
We could.
you got me, and I'm not going to tangent. I'm just going to tie this back real quick. It made me think about how ambition works inside of, like you were talking about, the life we were birthed into. And it's just an interesting conversation. But thank you for clarifying that as well, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of people are still choosing to be happy regardless of their privilege. And it's just a beautiful thing to be able to travel to other countries and see, like, you don't have what I have, and you're probably even happier than I am. It's amazing.
Oh, 100%. Right? I had that experience. Yep. Yeah. And even just not, you don't have to go to other countries. Like, even when I worked in North Philly, whatever, So, but yeah, I just like to honor it. I really like to honor that piece, but I also really err on the side of agency. Like I really have a strong belief in no matter what, no matter where, it's both. Yeah. It's very nuanced, but there's always that spiritual choice of how you respond to your circumstances and that sense of agency within them. So good. Okay, so good. We could really maybe we'll have to do this again because we could definitely go deeper on this. And it's up from me right now because in a couple of weeks, I'm giving this talk. And you and I met at a speaking conference, so this is timely. I'm giving a talk on how to raise culturally competent kids at my son's school for parents. And it's a pretty big topic. And it's an edge for me. It's a courageous edge for me to be inside of my child's community as somebody who's really only been identified as a mom there, stepping into this bigger conversation. So it's up for me when I speak of these ideas. So thank you for going there with me for a minute.
That's so awesome. I'm very proud of you. Okay.
Thank you. We can talk about that later. So here's what I want to close with. I want you to just speak to the audience around what is the real heart and soul of your work, and why do you think this work is important in your community and beyond? And I'm going to make sure that they then can find your work with what you call, is it the Ambition Studio? Is the new program. But I've been really curious about this as I invite these powerful women on the show is what's at the soul? What's at the heart? Like, why does this matter beyond ourselves out in the world, the work that you do?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I want everyone to know that ambition is a superpower. It is not a sacrifice. And when you're willing to be authentic and truthful and vulnerable and deeply connected and grounded to yourself, you're going to be able to serve so many more people. And when I say serve, it doesn't even necessarily mean through, entrepreneurial endeavors or even in your career, but just being a part of the collective consciousness and community and being valuable in this world. Ambition is so necessary, but you get to define what it means for you. And by having that strong relationship to where you are fueled, where you're motivated, where your drive comes from, and being able to manage and be the controller of the dial will give you so much more power back into your life. And so my work is, like I said, I'm so committed to not having another ambitious woman have to get the brick smacked on her head, there's pebbles out there. There are people who are supporting you, and it is okay and it is safe to listen. And I also want corporations and employers to know that you're going to get your best work from your employees when you are empowering their intuitive leadership, when they feel like they can have a safe space to follow that gut instinct and not have to work them into the bone and 60-hour work weeks and try to get every last little bit of work out of them. The way that we enjoy life is to simplify and to do less. It's not about how much effort in doing you're putting into things. It's about who you're being. And that's most important.
Love it. Love it. The heart and soul is really something about the ambition driving the power that you are in the world.
Yeah.
Really with authentic self-expression and vulnerability. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Queirra. Where can people find you?
So I'm so excited because the Ambition Studio is my new place online for all things to scale your business, to transform your ambition, to really be able to go further with these things that I'm talking about. So theambitionstudio.co is my website. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So you can search Queirra Fenderson or you can search The Ambition Studio to find me. But, reach out. There's so many ways that you can cultivate your own relationship to your ambition, and I'm so happy to help.
Awesome. I'll make sure I link to all of that in the show notes so people can find you easily. Thank you so much for coming on the show and having this really honest conversation with everyone. I'm so inspired by how big-hearted you are and how smart you are, and very, very courageous in how you show up in the world. So thanks for being a part of the conversation.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun, Sage.
Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhabs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication: Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. Thanks again. See you next time.